In this video, we're going to run through the full process of putting together a planar movie poster design. And the one that I have here is The Great Escape. I chose it essentially at random, simply because it's a movie that I really enjoy. So breaking this down to really basic imagery and creating a poster from it, and focusing on three different types of image creation. One of which is to create with basic shapes, so you'll see that down here with the POW camp and the buildings and the towers and such. The second one is to create by tracing with the pen tool over an image. So you'll see that with the motorcycle outline here. That shape was created through that. And then the last one is to literally use the image trace process, which is how we do the barbed wire and then the texture that goes on the background. So we're going to start really simplistically here. I am going to put these out on different layers, and this is a tutorial that takes a little while, so strap in. I'm going to create a new layer to start with, and this is going to be the camp down at the bottom. I'm going to lock this reference layer because that's all it is. It's just the reference. So I'm going to work here on this camp layer, and we'll start with building the most complex element out of this first set, which is this guard tower. Now, the process running through this is stuff that's been covered in other videos with greater specificity as far as working with shapes and such, so I'm not going to talk a lot about it. Instead, I'm just going to go through the process and try and move fairly quickly. So the method for creating this, I always work a little bit over large, is going to start first with making it kind of bigger and then scale it down, duplicate them as is necessary. But starting here, just with the main body of this guard tower, decide how thick I want it to be. And then the legs, the beams that serve as the legs for this, will be the next part. Now again, anytime you're making something symmetrical, you always want to use duplication as much as possible. So I could sit here and try and do multiple of these, but the best case scenario is always to copy and paste. Make sure I get this actually up here. Now I do like to take the time to zoom in, make sure these things are positioned just right. When you are duplicating something multiple times, it's a good idea to make sure that it's perfect. So I copied and pasted that. Object, transform, reflect. Make sure that I line that up properly. And then again, zoom in. Make sure that I've got the angle just right. So the next part is going to be the cross beams. So I'm just using rectangles to make these. I don't use the line tool that much, because then I'd have to go through the additional process of converting those. So I'm going to take this, rotate it 45 degrees, copy and paste, rotate it again, and then put those two together. So I've got cross beams, and then just set them so that they overlap and make this structure work. I'm going to merge those two together, and then take the eraser, increase the size with the bracket key, trim those down so that this extra is not visible. All good there. Take all these elements, merge them together. I'm going to cut a window in the upper part of this by using the Pathfinder minus front option. And then I'm going to create a roof using the polygon tool set to the lowest number of sides, which typically involves putting a roof on there and then sizing it down. It always amuses me when it's oversized. It's just a rather petulant thing that I laugh about. Alright, so all that's merged together. There's the basic guard tower. The legs are a little bit overlong, which is intentional. Now we'll scale this down. Put it down here, and I'm also going to take and create a ground plane, which is just a rectangle. So that's what the legs overlap with there. And that's probably in the right position. So I'll copy and paste that. And I want to make sure that both of these are lined up. There we go. As well as dead center. So I'll use this to help me get them centered up. And then I'll take these two, copy and paste so that I have another pair that's equally spaced apart. I will make those smaller, sink them down lower, a little bit smaller there. And then I will change their color to a lighter gray to make it look like they are further into the background. I think I want to go even lighter than that. Let me think about color a little bit here. Now obviously they're hanging over the front, so inside the camp layer, I'll just take those, both of them, and pull them down so that they're behind the ground plane. That will hide that part of the legs. And I'm going to take all of these, and I think my mouse just disconnected. It did, so switching to the Wacom for a minute. And I'm going to take that. I think that is the right shade of gray. Sometimes it's hard to tell. I'm going to say that's right. That's what I'm going to do. My mouse signal is not very good on this computer for some reason. Alright, so in between here, I'm going to build this little building, which I'll make it a little bit smaller. I don't have quite as much space. No matter how many times I do this, I always end up with a different level of spacing. And I typically will build the roof of this using just the pen tool, just like I did. Sorry, my brain just went out as I was thinking about how to properly use the pen tool. Oh, there goes my mouse again. Alright, object, transform, reflect. So I have two sides of that. And then I'll move that one over, line it up. Looks like it's a little ways more in there. And as is necessary, I'll just grab both sides, line them up till it's centered, merge everything down into single shapes, just to keep it simple. Alright, so there's, actually, not done with it yet. I forgot I got to take this building, copy and paste, put one over here. This just makes it look like it's a bigger camp, that there's more going on here. And for the other side as well. Put that there. And then select both and sort of line them up, make sure they're centered. Alright. Now we can move on to the next part, which is tracing with the pen tool to create the motorcycle outline. So move on to that stage. Oh, well, this is going to involve doing another layer, so in the meantime I'm going to go ahead and create a new layer, and this is going to be motorcycle reference. This is where I'm just going to put the reference image for it, and in the meantime I'm going to lock down the camp layer so that I don't accidentally do anything with that. So I'll take the image that I already have prepared, this motorcycle, and pull that in. It made it very tiny for some reason. And you can see even on the reference from the original design, I'm going to have to flip it so that it's pointed the other direction. That's not too much of an issue. So again, object, transform, reflect. And then really size, getting it the right size is the most important thing. I'm going to move this down beneath so I can kind of see, get a better reference point. I want the wheels to extend off the border of the image, but I don't want it to be too tall. So, however, now I'm looking at it, I realize I do have to make sure that these guard towers do not exceed the height. So I got to get that in the right place. So I think about right there. So I'll take this image then. When you select it, it gives you opacity options up at the top. I'm going to drop the opacity so I can just see that outer edge. And then I'm going to lock down this layer. I'll go up to my layers palette, create another layer, and this one's going to be motorcycle. Apparently I don't know how to spell cycle. Silhouette. At least I can spell silhouette. Now it'd be great if my mouse would work during this, because this is considerably easier to do with the mouse. I'm going to select a random color here, and then I'm going to just kind of trace along. And this is not going to involve any curves. This is just straight line stuff. And this can be a little bit tedious, so I'll just sit here and talk through it to make sure nobody gets bored during the process. I want this outline that I'm creating, this trace, to be kind of rough, sort of in the style of Saul Bass. If you are not familiar with him, you should Google the name. This is kind of the guy who introduced the minimalist movie poster. The concept of using this sort of planar, placket steel, simplified imagery, working from inspiration of other artists. I think of Klinger's birds, these toucan advertisements that were used during the early 20th century. Saul Bass really pioneered this in movie posters. And there's always some healthy argument as to where influences come from and to what extent who pervade them, but Saul Bass is generally agreed to be one of the great designers in the history of, I won't even just say movie posters. He did a lot of different kind of work. He also did considerable work in marketing and logo design, etc., but his movie posters are a source of particular inspiration to me. So they always had this sort of rough geometry to them. And one to look up in particular would be his poster called, for the film, Anatomy of a Murder with James Stewart. A heck of a good movie, really good poster. Look it up. He also used a lot of intensely bright colors in his posters, similar to the background color that I'm using in this design, which is similar to the color I'm using right now just to trace this out temporarily. Now all I'm doing is just running along the outer contour of the motorcycle, not worried about any detail at all. I just want the silhouette, just that imagery, that familiar shape. So I'm not worried about accuracy, not worried about detail. I want to get the gist. It fits this film, it fits the style, it pays homage to Saul Bass, who was awesome. Now that I'm off canvas, I zoom back out, and basically I just need to complete the shape by working out here off canvas till I close it off. So that gives me my silhouette as needed. I'll move it down here behind the camp, and then I'll change the color. There goes my mouse again. At least it lasted as long as I needed to. Change it to white. Now I am going to lock down that layer, go back here above the references, and I'm going to create the literal background because there needs to be an actual background color. And in order to do that, just literally put a rectangle over the background and choose the appropriate color for it. And you see we're well on our way. It just lacks some significant tonal elements, one of which is the texture, and then of course the barbed wire, which we'll get to that in the second half of this tutorial.